A 2015 study from the University of Minnesota found female athletics only accounts for 4% of general sports coverage, but the center that did the study says females make up 40% of all sports participants. I wanted to know how Delmarva television media compares to the rest of the nation. Here's what I found.
Coach Keisha Cook spends a lot of time working with students on the basketball court and in the classroom. She played basketball at Parkside High School in Salisbury in the 90s and then collegiately at the University of Maryland. Now she teaches middle school math and also coaches girls basketball at Mardella Middle and High School in Salisbury. She says while she loves women's basketball, not everyone cares as much as she does.
And I think the more support that we get from the community for women's sports in general, I think that would help balance the playing field. We can get more fanfare to come out, get people to support women's sports as a county, as a state. I think that gap would be lessened in how sports are covered for male and females.
Recent studies show it's a problem for women everywhere. In a 2015 study, researchers at the University of Southern California found that ESPN's lead program, SportsCenter, spent only 2% of coverage on women's athletics across 2014. Los Angeles broadcast affiliate spent only 3.2% of airtime on female sports during the same calendar year. But one local Salisbury station says it works to cover men's and women's sports fairly. The Delmarva Peninsula's ABC affiliate, WMDT, structures its weekly sportscast, Delmarva Sports Insider, to include coverage of men and women.
So we have separate blocks that we always set aside for boys games that week, for girls games that week, for games collegiately, SU, UMES, if we go to Wesley, if we go to UD, UMD, or whatever we're covering.
The 5-person sports department puts together Delmarva Sports Insider each week with balance in mind, but says convenience for the staff is a main factor.
Sometimes it's about convenience, whether or not, let's say for example, I'm getting sent out to North Carolina to cover a baseball game. Well, where's their softball team playing that day? Are they playing right across the field because their baseball field and their softball field are right back to back? And then is their lacrosse team going to play a little bit later on tonight like they did last year, actually a few times, in which case we can go grab all 3 games. So convenience plays a huge factor.
Across the 7 Delmarva Sports Insider episodes in January and February, nearly 77% of its coverage focused on male athletics. In those same 7 episodes, female athletics saw just over 23% of coverage.
Obviously, like anything, there's more attendance at the guys' games, so that leads to more intrigue from the audience perspective. So for us, that leads us. Obviously, they're a little bit more, but we definitely, and I definitely try to make it a point or of significance to try to get to a lot of the girls' coverage, just like in Salisbury, men play lacrosse and the Salisbury women play lacrosse. It's different there because the men are just as good as the women. I don't think it's necessarily ill-intentioned. I think that we're in a ratings-driven business, and when you're trying to get ratings, you tend to go to what people go to more. So if the people in the audiences are bigger and there's more anticipation for the guys' sports, I think that's what television stations anyway in general have been kind of geared towards getting out and going to a little bit more.
When compared with the sports coverage from the local CBS affiliate, WBOC, similar coverage is shown. WBOC doesn't have a weekly sports show. Instead, it covers sports in its nightly newscasts. In the station's 24 February nightly newscasts, local aspects of the sports segment focused about 80% of coverage on male athletics, while female athletics saw about 20% of coverage. One person who's noticed? Coach Cook.
We've had awesome coverage from television, from WBOC and WMDT 47. They contact the coaches to see, what's going on. They do highlights now of your team before the season, which is great. I mean, it gives them the self-confidence to know that they're in the same playing field as other male sports.
In Salisbury, I'm Chris Makoviak reporting.